All right, so the question we're going to look at this time is, why does alcohol make me wired instead of sleepy? So alcohol is an interesting substance in that it is both a stimulant and a depressant. So when we take the first drink, say for the evening, we're going to get a 50 to 350% increase in a brain neurotransmitter called dopamine. You may have heard of this. And dopamine is going to give us the classic buzzy, nice euphoric feeling as the alcohol enters the bloodstream. That feeling is not going to be long lasting. It's only going to be about 15, 20 minutes. And the other thing about this dopamine increase is that it's unnatural, right? The brain is going to pick up that it's had this big spike and it's going to try and dampen it back down again. Probably the best way to represent this is to have a look at it in a slide presentation. So I'll just get that ready for you. Right, so on screen I've got a slide and it's a visual representation of a timeline and a glass of beer at the front, of course. So 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and we'll have a look at what happens with the various neurotransmitters in the brain as we introduce the alcohol, and then the brain responds to that. So the first thing that's going to happen is going to be the dopamine response. So 50% to 350% increase over the natural levels of dopamine in the brain. And this spike is going to give us nice feelings for about 15 to 20 minutes. So it's going to rise up fairly quickly. How quickly is going to depend on, how much you've had to eat beforehand, how big you are as a person, male or female, and so on. But, roughly these figures are the averages. Now, the brain is a bit clever. It knows that this is an unnatural increase in dopamine. So what it's going to try and do is bring back the brain to a normal level, right? Bring it back to normality or homeostasis, as it's called. And it does that by injecting another neurotransmitter called dynorphin. So dynorphin is going to produce a dampening effect, right? So initially you feel great, and then that feeling is going to disappear because the dynorphin is trying to bring back the dopamine back to normal levels. All right, so there's the initial bit. There's also other feel-good chemicals like serotonin. Here's the dynorphin. There are other chemicals involved with this as well. Another one called GABA is mixed up in this as well, but these are the primary culprits. Mention that. And then it's going to start to act as a depressant or sedative once that dopamine effect wears off. Right. Now we have another line that's just popped in here. This is the blood alcohol content. So you've taken your drink, your dopamine has spiked. Uh, sometime later, 15 minutes or so, the dynorphins kicked in, and at the same time, the blood alcohol level has been rising. And if nothing else changes, you just have that drink, the blood alcohol level will start to drop off and head back towards zero. Now, normally, we're not just satisfied with one drink. We want to have more than one drink. So let's say we have a second drink, right? And now what is the kicker, or what is it that kicks that off? Is it what we think, or is it something happening in our body? Well, as the blood alcohol level starts to drop off here, because the liver has kicked in, it started processing the alcohol, we get like a tiny little withdrawal. And the brain picks that up as kind of a niggling, uncomfortable feeling. And you might have the thought, well, gee, I wouldn't mind another drink, or another drink sounds good. Or, your shout, Bill, because you feel uncomfortable and you would like another drink. Plus, your reward system has been hijacked by the dopamine, right? It's going to want to chase these dopamine highs. So the net effect is going to be, I want another drink. So let's say you have another drink and we get a rise in dopamine, right? It's not going to be as much because we've got the presence of dynorphin, and we're not going to get a buzzy euphoric feeling because of all this stuff down the bottom here. Right, as the dopamine rises back up again, our blood alcohol level will start to rise as well. Right, so our brain is going to start to feel the effects, the depressant effects of the alcohol, and it's going to start to slow down. The thought processes start to slow down. As this goes on, maybe your speech starts to slur. Maybe you start to feel sleepy because of that depressant effect. All right, as the blood alcohol level drops off again, you're going to get that same niggly feeling. Now, how long this is in here could be half an hour, could be 20 minutes, could be an hour. You want another drink, blood alcohol level increases, dopamine increases. And notice every time along here, as you've taken more drinks, the dopamine effect has been much reduced. So the brain's like, well, what the? I'm not getting my hit. I want to chase more and more dopamine hits. And of course, you are getting more and more intoxicated with the blood alcohol levels. All right, now there's another thing that's happening with all of this. Because the blood alcohol level has risen down the bottom here, right, all along this line, the brain recognizes that this is having an anesthetizing effect on the brain. And because there are autonomous systems in your body that need to run regardless of what you're doing, like breathing, circulation, heart regulation, digestion, etc., they still need to run, and that's controlled by the brain. So what the brain will do is drop stimulants into the bloodstream that allow the neurons that are responsible for all of that to continue to communicate. Right? As you get drunker, the neurons in the brain find it harder and harder to talk to each other without the presence of these stimulants. So the brain says, okay, we need to amp things up and start dropping in adrenaline and cortisol. Right. So that is that purple line there. Now, if you just have one drink, we get this increase in cortisol and adrenaline. Right. They rise with the blood alcohol level and then they're very slowly reduced. Right. Compared to how quickly the blood alcohol level comes down and the dopamine levels, the adrenaline and cortisol take a long time to taper off in the bloodstream, right? To keep things going, right? To keep us alive effectively whilst we're getting drunker and drunker. All right, so, oops. No, we won't worry about that for a sec. Get rid of all the ink. Now, we were having more and more drinks, and we saw our blood alcohol level increasing, and we saw our dopamine, right? We're trying to chase those highs, and we never quite get there. But we haven't really talked about this. So this thing will continue to rise, and then it will slowly come back down again. Now, let's say we stopped drinking and we went to bed, somewhere in here. Okay, we go to bed, we've got a lot of alcohol in the system, we're sleepy, and we drift off to sleep, and our poor old liver starts to process the blood alcohol, and we're sort of progressing along, heading towards zero. Let's say it's about 4 a.m. in the morning, right? We wake up in here, right? Our blood alcohol level has dropped right off, but we've got all these stimulants. Look how much stimulant we've got in our bloodstream, right? So at this point of waking up, we might find ourselves shaky, trembly. Our heart might be racing, pumping really fast. We might have high blood pressure because our liver's been working overtime. And we're probably feeling really uncomfortable at this point. And to top it all off, we need to go to the toilet. So we wake up and then we come back to bed and we try to go to sleep. So we end up tossing and turning in bed because we've got all these stimulants in our bloodstream still. Right? Don't have that much alcohol down here, but we've got all this stuff in here. So that's going to affect our sleep quality. Right? We're not going to be able to sleep easily through the last period through here. We'll probably keep waking up. We might even stay awake the whole time. We probably feel wired. We're awake, we're wired. So this is the wired effect that we're experiencing. And they sometimes call this the rebound effect. So we've gone through this initial stimulation of the dopamine. We've had the sedative effects of the blood alcohol level rising and we're getting drunker. The adrenaline and cortisol is going through the roof. but we're not aware of it because we're drunk until such time as the blood alcohol level drops right off, and then we're left with all those stimulants in the bloodstream. So that's the wired effect again, the rebound effect. We can wake up and we can be like, oh, I can't go to sleep. And we can stay like that for a few hours, twiddling our thumbs. Maybe we start ruminating, thinking about all the things we did while we were drunk or what we said and so on. And it gets really uncomfortable until such time as we get up in the morning, we get out of bed, maybe we're still a bit shaky and a bit trembly. Maybe our blood pressure's still up a bit. And then we're into the classic hangover. Maybe we've got a hangover, a headache some period through the waking up process. We're dehydrated. We need to drink a lot of water and stuff. The reason why we feel shaky and wired and kind of alertish is because of these stimulants in the bloodstream. All right, so we've seen here from this presentation then the effects of the alcohol in the bloodstream. We've gone from, initial stimulant, euphoric feeling, to the depressant stage when the dynorphin cuts in and the effects of the blood alcohol levels start to increase. We have a sedative effect on the brain. Poor old brain's got to keep everything working, so it pumps us full of adrenaline and cortisol stimulants, and they stay in the bloodstream for a long period of time so that as the blood alcohol level comes back down again once you stop drinking, those stimulants take over, and basically that's where you get the wired feeling from. So yes, you can feel wired after you've been drinking. All right, I hope that explains that question for you. Thanks for watching.